Mark had traveled far beyond the normal trade routes. His small ship moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space, engines humming with steady rhythm. He was not a soldier or a powerful leader. He was just an explorer, a man who searched for forgotten things. Many people back on the colonies laughed at him, saying there was nothing left to find. But Mark believed the stars always kept secrets, and sometimes the past waited to be uncovered. For weeks, he had scanned this region. The maps showed it as empty, just cold space with no life or station. But then his radar picked up something faint. At first, he thought it was an error, maybe just dust or a broken signal. Yet the shape grew clearer with every pass. It was not natural. It was a ship. A massive ship. Mark leaned closer to the window as his vessel drifted near. The sight filled him with awe. The alien ship was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its hull stretched for miles, rusted and torn by time. Once it might have been a grand vessel, but now it floated like a ghost in the void. Parts of the structure were broken, entire sections missing, but somehow it still held together. The old giant had survived storms of space for thousands of years. He circled slowly, shining his ship's lights across the surface. Strange markings ran along the outer hull, faded but still visible. They were not human letters. The curves and lines looked almost like art, as if the builders wanted the ship itself to tell a story. Mark recorded everything, whispering to himself, "No one has seen this in ages." His scanners reported silence. No energy, no life. The ship was dead. But something about it pulled him closer. He felt it the moment he saw it, like the wreck was calling out to him across time. He ignored the warning lights on his console telling him the structure was unstable. He could not turn away now. Docking was difficult. The ship's ports were twisted with age, but he found a place where his vessel could attach. When the connection sealed, Mark put on his suit and prepared to step inside. His heart raced. He knew he might find nothing but empty metal. He also knew the ship could collapse at any moment. Still, he opened the hatch and stepped forward. The air inside was still and dry. His suit detected no oxygen, no pressure, only the silence of a place abandoned for too long. He switched on his helmet light. Dust floated around him in small clouds, disturbed by his steps. The corridor stretched out, walls coated with rust and cracks. Cables hung like vines, and broken panels sparked faintly before going dark again. Mark walked slowly, each step echoing through the hollow passage. The size of the ship amazed him. The ceilings rose high above, wide enough for crowds, yet now there was only emptiness. He imagined what it had been like long ago: bright lights, voices speaking in alien tones, travelers moving through with hope in their eyes. Now, it was only the sound of his boots. He turned corners, guided by instinct. Part of him felt lost, but another part felt guided, as if the ship wanted him to see something. The deeper he went, the colder it became. His suit kept him warm, but he shivered anyway. The silence was heavy, pressing on him. He could almost hear whispers, though he knew it was only his mind. Then he reached a larger chamber. His light spread across rows of strange machines, lined up like coffins. Most were broken, shattered glass and empty frames. But one row still stood, though power had long faded. Mark stepped closer, brushing dust from the surface of one. Inside was nothing, only fragments of fabric. Another chamber held bones so fragile they seemed ready to turn into dust. He realized these were not machines. They were cryo chambers. A chill ran through him. Whoever had built this ship had placed their people inside, hoping to survive a journey or a disaster. But the system had failed. Thousands of years had passed, and now only silence remained. Mark stood still for a long time. His chest felt tight, and he struggled to breathe even though his suit worked fine. He thought of the people who had slept here, never waking. He thought of how their story had been forgotten, their ship left to rot in the void. He whispered, though no one was there to hear. "You were not lost. I found you." In that moment, he felt both sadness and purpose. This was not just a wreck. This was history. And maybe, just maybe, something more waited deeper inside. Mark lifted his head and looked toward the far end of the chamber. A faint glow flickered there, small and weak but alive. It was impossible, yet it was there. Without hesitation, he walked toward the light. Mark moved slowly toward the weak glow at the end of the chamber. Each step echoed against the hollow walls, and the faint light grew clearer. His helmet display warned him of falling debris and unstable structure, but he ignored it. His attention was fixed only on that glow, as if it was the last heartbeat of the old ship. When he reached the end, he stopped. Before him stood a single cryo chamber that still held shape, though its frame was cracked and its glass covered in dust. Unlike the others, this one pulsed faintly with dying power. The light flickered like a candle about to go out. Mark wiped the glass carefully with his gloved hand. Inside, he saw what was left of the one who had once rested there. The figure's body had long decayed, leaving only fragile remains wrapped in faded fabric. But there was something different about this chamber. It was not only a machine of survival. Symbols were carved around its edges, flowing like writing but shaped with care. To Mark, they looked almost ceremonial, like a monument. He leaned closer, studying the symbols. His translator system blinked, struggling to make sense of the alien script. It caught only fragments, broken words, incomplete phrases. Yet he could make out enough to understand the importance. The markings spoke of honor, duty, and leadership. This was not just anyone. This had been a person of meaning. Mark whispered, "Who were you?" Almost as if answering, the control panel beside the chamber came alive for a brief moment. The weak glow brightened, and a burst of static filled his helmet. His translator clicked and buzzed, pulling fragments of sound into words. A voice began to speak, soft, melodic, and filled with echoes of age. At first, Mark could not understand, but then parts became clear. The voice repeated a name again and again: Aaron. Then came broken sentences. Chosen to lead our journey, new home. The message was incomplete, but the meaning cut deep. Aaron had not been just a traveler. She had been someone chosen to carry her people forward, someone trusted with the weight of hope. And now she lay here, her body lost to time, her name nearly forgotten. Mark felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He had seen many ruins before, many old machines and records, but never something like this. This was not just technology. This was personal. A leader, a dreamer, had been trapped here for thousands of years, while the galaxy outside had moved on. The panel flickered again, struggling. Another part of the recording played. This time, Mark's translator caught a full sentence. It was spoken slowly, as if the speaker had prepared it carefully for someone who might not share her language. "If you hear this, help me remember." Mark froze. The words echoed in his mind, clear and sharp. They were not just data. They were a plea, one prepared for a distant future. Somehow, Aaron had known that her people might fail, that only a stranger might find her. She had left behind not only her name, but a request. He placed his hand on the chamber's glass. The surface was cold, but he felt a strange connection. He imagined Aaron standing here, alive, speaking to her people. He imagined her courage as she accepted her role, her fear as the ship failed, her final moments of silence as the chamber sealed. All that was left now was dust and a fading voice. Mark wanted to turn away, but something held him there. He could not leave yet. His eyes traced the carvings again, and he noticed a symbol that repeated many times. It looked like a star surrounded by smaller points of light. He guessed it was a crest, a mark of her house or her world. It reminded him of human flags, the way civilizations marked themselves with signs of unity. He spoke aloud, even though he knew there would be no reply. Aaron. I will not forget. The chamber hummed weakly, as if it had heard him. The light flickered brighter for a brief second, then dimmed again. Mark's suit registered the last of the chamber's power fading away. Soon, even this faint glow would vanish, leaving only silence. Mark stepped back, his heart beating fast. The cryo chamber stood as a tomb, but also as a message across time. A princess, or maybe a leader, had been trapped for 2,000 years. Her body was gone, yet her voice had survived. She had asked for someone to help her remember, and now, against all odds, a human had heard her. Mark looked around the chamber, wondering if there was more. The ship was massive, and perhaps other records still lay hidden. If Aaron had left one message, there might be others. Maybe the vessel itself still carried fragments of her memory. For the first time since entering the wreck, Mark felt more than sadness. He felt purpose. This was not only exploration anymore. This was a responsibility. He took one last look at the cryo chamber before turning to move deeper into the ship. The darkness seemed less empty now. He walked with careful steps, his light guiding the way, ready to uncover what else the forgotten vessel had kept hidden. Somewhere in the broken silence, a new path waited. Mark stood in the dim chamber, staring at the cryopod where Aaron's remains rested. The faint glow had nearly faded, but something still lingered. He could not explain it. The ship felt alive in its silence, as if waiting for him to take another step. He adjusted his helmet light and followed the faint trail of symbols etched into the walls. They stretched beyond the chamber, leading deeper into the wreck. Mark's curiosity grew stronger. Whoever built this ship had not just made a machine for travel, they had filled it with meaning, with art, and memory. The corridor ahead was wide and long, with metal beams bending inward like the ribs of some giant creature. Dust floated in the air as Mark moved carefully forward. His boots crunched over debris, broken glass, and fragments of strange devices. Every sound he made seemed to echo forever. After several minutes, his light caught a doorway ahead. The frame was decorated with more carvings, circles within circles, like stars turning around a sun. The door was half open, rust holding it in place. Mark pushed hard, and with a groan, the door gave way. Inside was a chamber that looked different from the others. The walls glowed faintly with blue light, though the power was weak. Strange shapes filled the room, large crystal-like structures standing upright in rows. Some were cracked, others dark, but a few still shimmered with flickers of energy. Mark walked closer, fascinated. His suit scanner beeped, detecting a weak signal. These structures were not just decoration. They were memory banks. He realized this must be the archive of the ship, a place where knowledge was stored. One of the crystals still pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. He reached out, brushing dust away. The surface was smooth, cold, and strangely warm at the same time, as if it remembered being alive. When his glove touched the side, a sudden spark ran through the room. The crystal lit up, and the others followed with brief flashes. The ship groaned as if waking from a long sleep. Mark stepped back, his light bouncing off the walls. Then, slowly, a voice began to speak again. This time it was clearer than before, as though the archive carried stronger recordings. The voice was the same one he had heard in the cryo-chamber Aaron's. Her tone was calm, filled with quiet strength. Though broken, his translator worked harder now, piecing together fragments of her words. I am Aaron, chosen to guide my people to New World. Ship failed, the sound cracked with static, but the meaning was there. She had been a leader, carrying her people across the stars, searching for safety. Mark closed his eyes, listening. It was like hearing a ghost speak across 2,000 years. The message continued. If anyone finds this, know that we dreamed of tomorrow. Do not let us be forgotten. The words struck Mark like a weight. He imagined her standing in this very chamber, recording her final thoughts as systems failed around her. He imagined the fear in her people's eyes, the silence after the engines stopped, and the moment when hope turned into despair. Yet Aaron had chosen to leave not just silence, but a message. Mark walked slowly among the crystal pillars, running his hands across their surfaces. Each one contained a fragment of her people, their language, their art, their music, their history. Many were too broken to read, but some still hummed faintly, waiting to be unlocked. As he moved, more pieces of Aaron's voice played, as if triggered by his presence. We believed in stars, our journey was long, if you hear me, remember us. Mark felt chills run through him. These were not only records of facts. They were voices of a people who had lived, loved, and dreamed. Aaron had carried them, and when all else failed, she had chosen to speak to the future, to anyone who would listen. The ship creaked again, and for a moment the lights flickered brighter, as if responding to her voice. Mark wondered if some part of the vessel itself was tied to her, holding her memory within its walls. He whispered, Aaron, I hear you. The translator picked up the word "here" and the crystal glowed faintly in answer. For a second, Mark thought it was more than a machine. He thought he felt her presence in the room, faint but real, like someone standing just behind him. He turned quickly, but of course, there was only silence. Still, he knew one thing for certain. He could not leave this ship behind. Not yet. He had to uncover more. Aaron's story was unfinished, and he had been chosen by fate, by chance, or perhaps by her to carry it forward. Mark activated his wrist recorder and began to save everything he could. He recorded the carvings, the crystals, and the fragments of her voice. Each word felt like a treasure, each sound a gift across time. He looked back at the glowing crystal one last time before moving toward another passage that branched off the archive. The faint light seemed to guide him again, flickering in the direction he should go. Mark's steps grew steadier. The fear he had felt earlier was fading. Now there was purpose. He was not just an explorer anymore. He was a witness. And somewhere in the shadows of the rusted ship, he felt certain that Aaron was still with him, not in body, but in memory, in voice, and perhaps even in spirit. Mark followed the side passage that branched off from the archive. His helmet light swept across the walls, catching more of the same carvings he had seen earlier. But these were different. They were not only words, they looked like scenes. Whole panels showed figures standing together beneath stars, holding banners, guiding children, building cities. It was the story of a people, carved into metal so it would not be lost. He paused often to study them. One panel showed a tall figure with a crown-like symbol above her head. The translator highlighted a single name beneath it: Aaron. She had not just been a leader. She had been the chosen one, perhaps even a princess, carrying the hopes of thousands. Mark felt a quiet respect building in him. He had never met her, never heard her voice in person, yet he already felt he knew her. She was more than bones in a broken cryopod. She was memory, hope, and sacrifice. The passage ended at another large door. Unlike the others, this one opened smoothly as he approached, as if the ship itself recognized him. Mark frowned, checking his scanner. There was no logical reason for it, yet it happened all the same. The ship seemed to be guiding him deeper, almost like a hand pushing gently at his back. Inside, the chamber was vast and circular. The ceiling rose high above, disappearing into shadows. The walls glowed faintly, forming shapes that reminded him of constellations. At the center of the room stood a tall structure, like a pillar of metal and glass. It pulsed with faint light, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of something not quite alive. Mark walked closer. His scanner beeped wildly, detecting energy fluctuations, though none should exist after so many centuries. He placed a hand on the pillar. The surface vibrated faintly, and then, all at once, the chamber came alive. Lights flared along the walls. Symbols appeared, glowing in patterns that circled the room. A low hum filled the air, and Mark felt a pressure in his chest, as if something unseen was reaching for him. Then the voice returned. It was Aaron again. Clearer than before, stronger, as if the pillar was the core of her memory. The translator caught more of her words this time. Our journey ended, but I remain, bound to guide. Mark's breath caught. Her voice was not just a recording anymore. It felt present, almost alive. When she spoke, the lights shifted, responding to each word. He whispered, Aaron, are you still here? The pillar pulsed, brighter for a moment, then softer again. It was not speech, yet it was an answer. Mark stood still, trying to understand. Somehow, the ship had kept a part of her. Not only her voice, not only her memories, but something deeper, an echo of her soul. It was fragile, faint, but it lingered. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. He was not alone here. The lights around the chamber began to shift again, forming moving images. Mark watched as scenes unfolded. He saw Aaron standing before her people, her hands raised in reassurance. He saw the massive ship being prepared for launch, filled with thousands of passengers. He saw the moment of departure, when engines burned bright and carried them away from their dying home. Then the images darkened. The engines faltered, storms of debris struck, systems failed. He saw Aaron standing again, but this time her face was filled with sorrow as she guided her people to the cryo chambers. He saw her step into the last chamber, the door sealing, her eyes closing in hope that the future would bring rescue. Mark's throat tightened. He whispered, "You never gave up." The pillar glowed again, soft and steady, as though it agreed. For a long time, Mark stood in silence, letting the images and the hum of the chamber surround him. He realized then that he had been chosen, not by fate alone, but by the persistence of Aaron's will. She had refused to be erased, and now, across 2,000 years, her voice had reached a human explorer. He placed both hands on the pillar. "I will remember. I promise." The lights flickered brighter, sweeping around the room. It was almost like joy, like relief. The hum grew louder for a moment, then softened into calm again. Mark stepped back, his heart heavy but steady. He knew now what he had to do. The ship might not survive much longer, but her memory could. He would carry her story, her people's dreams, back to humanity. She would not be forgotten. Before leaving the chamber, he turned one last time. He could not see her, but he felt her presence. It was like standing in the company of someone unseen but real. In the quiet, he spoke softly. "You are not alone anymore." And for a brief moment, the glow of the pillar seemed to brighten in answer. Mark left the great chamber with the glowing pillar, but the feeling of presence followed him. It was not like a voice in his ear or a shape beside him. It was quieter, softer, like the warmth of a thought that did not belong to him. Every time his light flickered across a wall or the ship groaned with stress, he felt less alone. The corridors stretched on, long and endless, but the ship seemed to guide him. Lights sparked to life for only seconds at a time, showing him the way forward. It was impossible for a vessel this ancient to still have working systems, yet here it was, moving in answer to him. Or perhaps in answer to Aaron. He came to another chamber, smaller than the others. It looked like a hall of memory. The walls were covered in crystal panels, each one showing faint images when his light touched them. Mark stepped closer and saw scenes of daily life: children playing, families sharing food, workers shaping tools, leaders addressing crowds. It was the story of Aaron's people, not in words but in pictures that needed no translation. Mark felt his chest grow heavy. These were not just travelers in space. They had lived, laughed, and dreamed. Now all that was left was dust, shadows, and the echo of one woman who had tried to carry them all. As he walked along the panels, the faint presence grew stronger. The images shifted, not randomly, but with purpose. They focused on Aaron, showing her with her people, guiding them, comforting them. Then one panel brightened to show her alone in the command chamber, her head lowered in sorrow. Mark placed his hand against the surface, and for a brief second he felt something like emotion passing into him. It was sadness, but not despair. It was the sorrow of someone who had lost everything yet still hoped someone would remember. Mark whispered, "I see you, Aaron." His translator beeped, and for a moment, he thought he heard a faint answer. A word too soft to understand, but it was there. The ship hummed gently, like a sigh of relief. Mark sat down on a broken metal bench, lowering his helmet for a moment to press his forehead against his glove. He had always searched for meaning in the stars, but most of the time he found only rocks, empty ships, or broken machines. Now he had found more than he ever dreamed. He had found a soul reaching across 2,000 years. He spoke aloud, though his voice shook. "You waited for so long. And now, I am here. I cannot bring your people back, but I can carry you with me. Humanity will know your name." The lights in the chamber flickered in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat answering his vow. Mark stood again, feeling stronger. He began recording everything he could. He scanned the walls, the images, and the shifting patterns of light. He spoke into his recorder as he worked, telling Aaron's story in his own words. This was Aaron. She was chosen to guide her people to a new world. Their ship failed, but she remained. She asked not to be forgotten, and I will honor that. Humanity must remember that even across the stars, hope lives. As he recorded, more fragments of Aaron's voice played from hidden corners of the chamber. Each was faint, but they grew clearer the more he stayed. We dreamed of a new dawn, we did not fear the stars. If anyone hears this, carry us forward. Mark listened to each word as if it were the most important sound in the universe. He responded gently, I hear you. I will carry you forward. The bond between him and the presence of Aaron deepened. It was not like speaking to a living person, but it was not empty either. It was something in between, fragile, beautiful, and lasting. After hours inside the hall, Mark knew it was time to move on. The ship was old and unstable, and he could not stay forever. But he could not leave without taking something of her with him. He found the central panel glowing faintly brighter than the others. With care, he removed a small data crystal embedded in the frame. His scanner confirmed it still carried fragments of memory, perhaps her voice, perhaps her story. He held the crystal in his palm, staring at its faint light. I will protect this. You will live again through us. The presence around him grew warmer, as if Erin herself was thanking him. Mark placed the crystal safely inside his suit's case. Then he turned to leave the hall, his steps slower but stronger. For the first time, he felt like he was not walking alone. As he moved back into the dark corridor, the walls glowed faintly behind him, like a farewell. Mark whispered one last promise. You are not forgotten, Aaron. Not anymore. The ship groaned, the lights dimmed, but the faint hum remained. It was not silence. It was memory. And Mark carried it with him. Mark carried the faintly glowing data crystal close to his chest as he walked deeper into the ancient ship. The corridors were darker now, some blocked by collapsed beams, others warped from centuries of drifting in the void. But each time he hesitated, a faint flicker of light would guide him toward another path, as if the ship itself still wanted him to reach its heart. He knew where he was being led. Every instinct told him that something waited at the center, something more than fragments of memory. After what felt like hours of slow progress, Mark entered a vast chamber unlike the others. The walls rose high and smooth, shaped in perfect circles. In the middle of the floor stood a great structure, round and glowing faintly. It pulsed with life, though weak and tired. Cables and broken conduits stretched out from it like roots of a dying tree. Mark's scanner beeped rapidly. The energy here was stronger than anywhere else. He walked closer, and as he did, the faint hum of the structure turned into sound. It was not a simple recording this time. It was Aaron's voice, soft but steady, as if she were speaking directly into his mind. You have come far, stranger, human. Mark froze. His heart raced. This was not only a memory. This was something more. I am what remains, the voice continued, broken by static but still carrying emotion. My body is gone, but my mind, my will, remain here. Bound to this ship. Waiting for one who would come. Mark felt his breath catch in his throat. She was not alive in the way he understood, but part of her essence had survived, locked into the ship's systems. It was fragile, fading, yet real. The lights of the chamber shifted, forming patterns on the walls. The translator worked quickly, pulling fragments into human words. I cannot remain much longer, Aaron said. The power that holds me is failing. But there is a choice. Mark took a step closer. What choice? The central structure pulsed, and the patterns around him shifted again, showing two paths. The first showed the lights dimming completely, the structure going dark, Aaron's presence fading peacefully into silence. The second showed energy flowing into a smaller device, an interface designed to transfer her memory. The risk was clear: her essence could survive, but only if she trusted him to carry it beyond this wreck. Mark swallowed hard. She was offering him a decision. To let her go, or to take her memory into human hands. He stood quietly for a long moment, feeling the weight of the choice. To allow her to fade might be mercy, letting her rest after 2,000 years of waiting. But to carry her forward would give her and her people a place in history, a second life through humanity. He placed his hand on the surface of the structure. Aaron, if you want rest, I will not stop you. But if you wish to be remembered, I promise I will carry you with me. You will not be forgotten. The lights flickered brighter, steady for the first time since he had entered. Her voice grew clearer, almost warm. I dreamed of tomorrow, she said. I dreamed of someone who would remember. I trust you. Mark felt his chest tighten. He had searched the stars for meaning, and now meaning had chosen him. The chamber shifted again. A small console rose from the floor in front of him, glowing faintly. His suit translated the symbols, transfer initiate. Mark inserted the crystal he had taken from the Hall of Memory into the console. The lights connected, streams of energy flowing from the great structure into the crystal. The room hummed, louder and louder, as if the ship itself was exhaling after centuries of silence. Aaron's voice filled the chamber one last time. Thank you, human, for hearing me. For carrying us. We are not lost. Mark stood firm as the transfer completed. His scanner confirmed it. The crystal now carried her essence, fragile but alive in some form. The structure dimmed, its hum fading until silence filled the chamber once again. Mark stood there in the quiet, holding the crystal close. The presence was still there, softer now, but with him. She was no longer bound to the dying ship. She was with him. He whispered, I will not fail you. The chamber gave no answer this time. The ship was truly dead now. But Mark did not feel alone. He turned and began his journey back to his own vessel. Each step echoed, but his heart felt steadier. He was not just leaving with data or relics. He was leaving with a legacy. The last of Aaron's people had entrusted their memory to him, and through him, to all of humanity. Mark returned to his small ship with the glowing crystal safely stored. The corridors of the ancient wreck were quieter now. The hum of the ship had faded, leaving only silence. Yet Mark did not feel fear. He felt purpose. He had been entrusted with something greater than exploration. He carried the voice, memory, and hope of a people who had been lost to time. The journey back through the wreck felt shorter. His mind replayed the chambers, the glowing pillars, and the images of Aaron guiding her people. Though he had never met her alive, he knew her courage, her wisdom, and her patience. He had felt her presence, a bond beyond the limits of life and death. When he finally reached his own ship and sealed the hatch, Mark sat for a long moment, holding the crystal in his hands. The faint light pulsed gently. It was a reminder that though her body had decayed, a part of her had survived. A part of her would now live through him. He powered the engines and set a course back to the nearest human colony. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but this time, they did not feel empty. They were full of stories, waiting for someone to remember them. And he had a story to carry, one that would inspire all who heard it. During the journey, Mark carefully studied the crystal. His ship's system slowly decoded the memory stored inside. He watched images of Aaron's people, their homes, their celebrations, their leaders, and children. He listened to fragments of Aaron's voice, teaching, guiding, comforting. Each moment felt alive. Every word was a connection across time. He realized that the people of Aaron's world had dreamed of the stars in the same way humanity had. They had hoped, struggled, and tried to survive. And now, because of her trust, they would be remembered. When Mark arrived at the colony, he went straight to the archives. Scientists and historians gathered quickly when he showed them the crystal. They had never seen anything like it. The images, the recordings, the data, it was not just information. It was a civilization, preserved for millennia. Mark explained everything, carefully recounting the story of the wrecked ship, the cryo chambers, and Aaron's message. He told them about her courage, her wisdom, and her patience. And he told them about the bond he had felt, the way her presence had guided him through the ancient halls. The historians listened in silence, awe spreading across their faces. For them, this was more than a discovery. It was proof that across the galaxy, life could survive, memories could endure, and hope could reach across time. The colony decided to honor Aaron. Her story was recorded, shared, and displayed. Statues were planned, images recreated, and her teachings studied. Through humanity, her people would have a place in the universe again. Mark watched all of it quietly. The glowing crystal rested in the main archive, its light soft but steady. Every so often, he felt the same warmth he had felt in the ship. It was faint, but it reminded him that Aaron's essence was still with him, in humanity, and in the stories she had left behind. As weeks passed, Mark often returned to the archives. He spoke to the crystal, recounting human discoveries and news, and somehow it felt as though Aaron was listening. The bond they had formed in the wreck had not ended. It had transformed. She was no longer trapped in a decaying ship. She was alive in memory, guiding and inspiring a new world. Humanity had learned from her courage. Colonists began exploring further, inspired by the story of a leader who had endured 2,000 years of silence. Scientists pushed boundaries, engineers tried new designs, and explorers searched the stars with renewed hope. Mark smiled quietly, thinking of her. A part of him had changed. He no longer saw the stars as empty. They were full of life, of stories, of courage waiting to be remembered. And sometimes, when the archives were quiet, he thought he heard her voice, soft but clear, whispering encouragement. "You are not alone," it said. Mark looked up at the sky, at the stars beyond the colony, and nodded. Humanity had carried her light forward. Aaron had waited 2,000 years to be remembered, and now she was. Her story, her people, and her courage would never be forgotten. Mark turned away from the archives and walked among the people she had inspired. He knew that through humanity, the echo of a soul lost to time had become a beacon for the future. And the stars, once silent, now carried her voice, shining across the galaxy, reminding everyone that hope could survive, courage could endure, and humanity could honor the past by building a brighter tomorrow.